Live from Houston, Texas. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of What Makes You Tick. I'm really excited you're here. This is number 25, my 25th episode. Pretty cool. And I got a great guest. But before we dive in, just a few housekeeping notes, as always. And today, like I said, I have an amazing guest. So you'll enjoy this lady and what we have to talk about. This is an interactive live session, so you're encouraged to participate however you can. To ask a question, drop it in the chat. It'll bring insight to our conversation, and we'll see it and pop up, and I'll bring it up. We'll use LinkedIn DM for comment section in the comment section of the event posting for any behind-the-scenes coordination, so feel free to send me a message. I'll see the message. If I can fix it, I will. If I can't, oh, well, I'm sorry. If you get disconnected, simply rejoin. LinkedIn occasionally bumps users. No big deal. We know many of you are listening and you're either commuting or you're going to work or you may be going to Thanksgiving somewhere. So just engage however you can. And if you're listening after the fact that when it's recorded, perfect. Love that. Thank you for being here. Now let's get started. My guest today is a superstar in the world of emerging tech, AI, cloud, IoT, basically anything that frightens any IT department. She's 30 years of tech career navigating the digital transformation. That's more than any of us change our passwords. As chief strategist at Redford Advisors, a firm she founded to help companies truly be AI ready, she also guides investors and entrepreneurs on the future and what is coming. She is a lifelong STEM advocate, which of course I like, being in science and teaching, advocate, serving on multiple boards, Supergirl Shine, Lone Star College, and Klein ISD, shaping the next generation of innovators who will one day laugh at our advanced tech. She also is a frequent industry speaker who last week at the American Data Center and AI conference proved she's the calmest person in the room of a panicked executive is going, wait, what's AI? Married for 30 plus years, mother of 3 successful women, proof that you can conquer tech, a family, and still look like you haven't spent your life debugging code. Miss Jill Sweeney is about to expand your mind as we find out what makes her tick. Jill, awesome to have you on. Give the listeners a little bit of insight into what makes Jill tick.
Okay. Well, thank you, Bryan, for that very generous introduction. You ought to probably have a stand-up show in addition to a podcast. So I'm here today, and I'm very excited to have a platform because it's so important for us to give back to others. And what I have found that has helped me always is giving a hand up to others, but also reaching out for some insights too. So I wanted to tell you my story. I actually didn't start out in tech, and to start a little earlier, I actually moved here from Scotland, and I am an immigrant and have a bit of that immigrant mentality. And my father worked for the same company for 40 years and kind of had that model. He also didn't have any boys, so everything that was being learned, there was no gender discernment in what you were going to learn, whether it was changing a tire or, making a bass drum out of a paint can or planting and assembling a greenhouse. So I actually didn't start out in tech. I chose financial services and thought that after college, I'd be celebrating my independence on Wall Street. Wow. And it didn't turn out that way. I was placed in a branch office 2 miles from my parents' house, which just happened to be on FM 1960, which is now called Cyber Parkway, but that is in the Houston area. So it was not this big career shift, of fame and fortune.
Right.
And the fame and fortune was actually very humorous because picking your career is important for you to know that bigger picture. I was so focused on a sales financial services career because I didn't want to sell steel like my dad, and it wasn't very open to women. So you should not maybe be in financial services during a financial crisis. And you probably shouldn't live in an oil town where you want to advise people on their pensions with a very, very low oil price. So thankfully, after joining a major company going to another company because I couldn't move, to the next step because I didn't
Right.
really have any experience. And then ending up at a family regional bank where the only way to move up was to marry someone in that company. And that was not maybe the most attractive prospect there. So I had the opportunity to join Compaq. So that was still growing. It was this
Yeah.
a few office buildings in the woods off of 249.
Uh-huh.
And I moved from financial services into technical services. So at the beginning, I focused on marketing, which was actually my degree. I had an industrial marketing degree and a minor in psychology. I didn't know how important that psychology was going to be later as you go through many, many corporate transformations. But I focused on marketing, go-to-market, product management, and quality, and of course, services. So by now, Compaq was now HP. There'd even been, an acquisition of digital equipment in the middle. And then there was Hewlett Packard Enterprise is what they became. So I worked on some very cool projects, but I wanted to do more and more interesting things. And I wanted to do more tech roles, but I didn't have an engineering degree. And
Right.
given my non-focus on math during high school, it's probably going to be unlikely that I was going to be able to add that engineering degree. So I still wanted to lean more into the tech. So my secret was to get certification of the tech behind the product that I was working on while holding my actual role. So it was kind of doubling down on what needed to be done. I was doing my day job, but we were launching new products that didn't exist or the market didn't know that there was a need for them.
Right.
So really exciting, but you wanted to learn the why behind that. So very important for coming up with great ideas, you have to know a little bit about what you're talking about. So one way to do that was get certified. I couldn't come in and say, oh, I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, I've got this great idea. So I took the certification and then I went to the next step. I didn't want to share with my fellow engineers what I'd learned because of course they know about coding. Of course they know about cloud computing. So I needed to figure out how I was going to share what I'd learned and kind of develop that gravitas. So I started to attend different industry events, and that's how I met you at a Cup of Joey.
That's right. Yeah.
I probably subjected you to some sort of AI pitch or digital transformation, but went to customer forums, found out what the customer issues were, and then I tried out my newfound knowledge. Now, it backfired a couple of times. Well, not exactly backfired, but definitely from a confidence level of going to a big Society of Information Management group and being seated at a table. And I'd been elected table host, which is exciting because that means you facilitate. You don't have to do as much talking. But I'm seated next to the number one person in Texas for Microsoft Azure Cloud. Well, I'm going to talk about cloud. So I'm like, oh dear, I'm going to be judged. There's going to be a report card. She was so helpful. I told her I was new, and she helped the discussion and amplified what I was doing. And I thought, this is great. This is what works very well in a collaborative environment, is to find people, to help you. And she was very useful. So later on, when we talk about kind of advice to really good and letting people know what my mission was to more and more events. And it was really exciting to be able to do that and have that confidence to talk about it. So going back to HPE, learning the technology was a really great foundation. And what I was doing was leaning into emerging technologies. It was great to work on something that was brand new because it was brand new for everyone. Right. You're not trying to find some new angle to something that's been around for 50 years, 25 years. You're coming up and learning what the customer challenges are, what the competitive environment is. Right. Another key learn what everyone else is doing. So you can leapfrog it, you can go around it. So through this, just about learning trust and figuring out, how do you have your voice heard? Well, as I made my technical pivot, I'm working with a lot of engineers. And I hope some of you are listening because, yes, you guys were intimidating. But the way to have a voice is with facts and data.
Right.
And at this point, I'd been moving into IoT and cloud. and the early stages of AI around machine learning and data analytics.
What
And
year
part of
was
that
this?
data, I already gave away with my 30 years, but this was early 2000s.
Okay. I'm just curious because I want to dig into some of that. But keep going. I want to apologize first of all. There's evidently there's some storms that have moved through Houston, and it looks like it's messed with our tech. So there might be some in and out, but right now we're doing fine. So go ahead, finish your story. Yeah, I want to hear the rest.
Half of my hair is missing, but that's maybe a good thing. We're in the South, but I do have the big hair. So facts and data became really important. Making dashboards, doing deep analysis, and presenting the findings. And not waiting until you got into the room to present those findings. Find out who was on your side, who agrees with you. It's a bit like before we had the Survivor and all of those cult shows, finding out who's on the island with you and who you can strike an alliance with and go and tell them, here's what I'm tasked with, here's what I found. I'd like your help or support. And either they tell you, no, this is not going to work for these 9,032 reasons, and then you can go off and work it. Otherwise, they'll say, you know what, that's a really good idea. I'll go talk to so-and-so. So that was really very helpful. The other piece was figuring out who the stakeholders are. So we've all heard of RACI charts, but there's the real RACI and there's the one who thinks they get a vote. They also think they're responsible or that they get to, give their feedback on, and understanding that, all the stated ones, but also the hidden ones, what matters, as well as the metric. What is the actual metric here? It's great to have facts and data, but you want to be able to prove your point and show that you're either going to get more margin, or it's going to be a stickier product that people are going to trade up to, or it's going to be such a competitive advantage, it's going to elevate you in the analyst view. So whatever that measurement is really important.
No, that's awesome. All right. So you started to see AI back in the day, and look, I've become a big AI believer. I think it's a great tool. I don't think it's something that it should replace people, but I do think it's something that you can utilize to move faster, to learn. I mean, I can't write. I grew up, look, I got my Louisiana stuff on. I'm cooking Cajun. I grew up in Louisiana, so reading is not my strength. But being able to understand how to write and how to read, AI has helped me create some stuff that I would have never been able to create. Now, granted, I don't want to copy AI, but also at the same time, within businesses, and especially, I'd love your insight in this, but in businesses, it seems that there's some trust factors, either in the people or the AI. But how can the AI add value into trusting or add value to a business? One, and two, I'd love to hear you talk about it from the time when you started to see it come up until what it is now.
That's a great point. Well, being in tech, you always have a forward-looking view, so kind of a long-tail market model, what the trends are. But AI was done largely in the high-performance computing area. So that was an area that I worked in, and these are the massive top 10 supercomputers that national labs and government agencies use. And AI was a faster processing way to be able to manage it, and the machine learning was very important in like the IoT world and manufacturing, because you wanted predictive maintenance. You wanted to know before the part breakdown and you have some sort of major incident that you have to evacuate the chemical plant's neighborhood and file a report of what might have been released into the atmosphere. So those things were happening, and those were just workloads, and they're scientific workloads. So they became more mainstream. So as the market needed more and more processing power and more analytics, they became, very attractive to large enterprises that are doing massive amounts of data processing and transaction processing, like in financial services or in healthcare, and doing human genome or Alzheimer's research. So those were exciting, because in tech, it's not about just the tech. You're going to fail unless you understand what the users need and what you can do to bridge that gap. So being involved in those, it was very exciting. I moved from an area that was doing R&D and they became a business unit, and they're creating parts of a giant cloud tech stack. And that was tremendously exciting to see what people were doing. It was also a massive shift. You've been selling these large servers, and now there's a whole new way to buy them as the economy tightens. Some of the post-COVID order backlog, gets a little slower. Who wants to pay, several $1 million for a server? So a new way to buy. At the same time, you're seeing all these new apps pop up, the software as a service, also called SaaS, and it's just changing the industry. So you go from how you used to develop products in a waterfall type manner, very, very regimented and disciplined, to a much more agile way to do that, where the time between new product launches is faster. So it was a great way to be part of that, but it also challenges some of your business processes. And if you, the fundamental, if you want to do AI, and so many people right now, there's so much hype. So cloud was the bonfire and AI is the gasoline. So, you've got board members coming in, we need to be in AI. We see what the competition's doing. Meanwhile, the workforce is saying, how do I do this? How do I catch up? So you mentioned something yourself about using AI. Now, AI from a personal productivity tool is great. There's so many things it can do. It can help with your productivity. It can help you with your spelling. I have the opposite problem. I was schooled in the UK. So I am the school of complete sentences. And a multi-generational workforce, if I want to really engage new graduates, I want to come across, less mom-like and less formal English. So I can use it to create a more conversational tone. If I'm doing a talk to university graduates, I want to be much more relatable than, the someone that's talking, in perfect English and could diagram the sentence. So I think there's a mix between your way and the other way, but it is great for spelling. And that's how many students start to use it. But then there's a challenge, and you're in education. Early on, students were told, don't use AI. It could be seen as cheating.
Correct.
And these folks have gone to high school with that, and now they've gone to college, and they may not have the early skills to be able to join the workforce and understand, at least they don't have the challenge of having to answer a real desk phone, since no one has those anymore. But they don't want to talk on the phone. They don't really know how AI is necessarily being used unless they were starting to use it themselves, or they were a techie and decided to try it out on their own. And that's a challenge in prepping that workforce. So there are so many ways to look at this. But first, I'd look at personal productivity. What tools can I use, whether I'm a coder, whether I'm a marketer, but just the basic piece. You want to do a query on find out, I had to buy new tires recently. So here's my car, here's my specs. What's the best deal? And it's saved hours from, so just creating queries, test it out, have your own hypothesis, but then test it out with AI. And that's a great way that I've seen students. You mentioned Lone Star College. They're doing some great things to make AI first and use it as a teachable moment. So, quote your sources, let them know that you created an outline and ask for an opinion. Tell the teacher or the professor what was added, what AI suggested, and how you learned from it. And then
it's an awesome tool. And being in education, I think I want kids to know. I want them to know how to use it. My thing is with the kids that I teach and the level I'm at, there's too many of them, and you can see this. You can obviously see the difference in their personality, what they do. They're just copying and pasting it. And if you do that, my thing is you're not learning from the AI, which is the idea here. There's so much you can learn, and based on the prompt that you can give it different prompts, giving information, and it can rewrite different things and help you go, okay. But I love the analogy you use for a discount tire. There's so many different things that you can use to search and to help grow. Whatever you're gonna do, because I remember, you remember back in the day, you had to go home, get on the phone, and go, "Hey, let me look in the yellow pages and see what we have." But you also brought up the other thing. why are there so many apps out there? Everybody has an app for everything. And it's like, hold on. At school, we've got all these apps now, and I'm looking at them. I may use 8, but there's 30, 40. What am I going to do with that? And some of them just aren't good, you know?
There's so many apps. It's like going into Play Store. I got an upgraded phone, and it didn't come with the QR code reader. And you know how we are at the Cup of Joey meetings.
Yes.
We want to scan the QR codes to go directly into LinkedIn, and it's not on there. So I go into the store. There's like 8,000. And how do I know which one to pick? So I picked one with a high rating and hoped it didn't have any ads, because some of them do. You press the wrong thing, and now you're dealing with some random ad that thinks it's what you think you need. And it's usually, if I'm standing in a coffee shop at a Cup of Joe event, it's thinking I'm wanting to know, do I want Sumatra blend or something else? Well, I actually drink tea, so none of it's useful. But yes, there's too many apps. You have to look and see what works for you.
Yeah.
Something that I found really great is in Houston, there's so much innovation here. And Houston likes to do hard things if you think about the type of products that they're launching. And I go to the ION, and I've sat in a number of business competitions, and you see there's a lot of people with apps, a number of people who want to have an app that shows what the menu ingredients are. Well, that's been there, done there. But I'm seeing, very hard things being put into an app. I think this is very cool. So one of the things that has happened, there's a couple of groups, Houston AI Club, and that's pretty granular, that brings in practitioners, students, the AI startups, but they've driven this program where you can learn, and they'll teach you 2 or 3 things each event. It's like the first Thursday of the month. And in addition to that, for the coders and the folks who want to go much deeper, they have actual office hours. They're virtual, but you join in and they teach you how to do something.
Right.
I first got excited about trying Notebook LLM, because I thought, I'm not going to be a coder. I don't know how to do, some of this coding. And I haven't done coding since college, and it wasn't like serious coding. It was like COBOL and Fortran, and
I did the same. Basic.
I haven't gone back to that, and I don't want to tell anyone, although I'm telling a wide audience here.
No, I get it. I'm the same boat.
The SaaS analytics that we used in marketing was much easier, because now I can run those type of Power BI queries. So you go to this, you learn the Notebook LLM. I did it. And I was so excited just by seeing it, because I promised I would promote the sessions, but I wanted to know about what was going on in order to confidently promote them. This is really cool. So then I was invited to a couple of lunches that a vendor comes in and shows you a project, and you actually do it with them. And that was so much from a confidence booster. It's like, I can do this. This is easy. And you don't have to worry about all the steps or what app to use. So what I'm doing is I'm following the top apps that people are using. I talk about it. I ask. I'm creating a resource of free training that college students can use, and also new people. I've got a couple of people that I'm advising that are going into their encore careers, and they want to learn how to use it too, or how it might be used in their work environment.
Right.
Then on the work side, I've been leaning into that a lot with my consulting business and working on AI readiness, AI ethics, what's important, starting a conversation. How do you talk about it? How do you find the ROI? And as part of that, the biggest thing to think about is AI on top of a bad business process is a terrible idea.
Correct.
So that's what many companies do. They're quickly want to automate this. But if you wouldn't automate it before, why would you do it now with AI? So you just really have to find the value. And there's a gap between hype and value, and you have to be able to sort through that. So the same thing with the apps. Get recommendations. If you're a natural, you go in and you test it out, or maybe you have 3 different kind of Fitbits,
right,
different, exercise trackers, then maybe. But, I use one type of fitness tracker, maybe not as often as I should. It doesn't get the, it hasn't worn out from overuse, but using that and, leaning into that. I don't want to connect to the Gyms app or something else.
No.
I just want my one data. Plus, it all eats data. When you look at it, you're like, how could I have used all this data, in 2 days?
It
because you're
uses a
connected to
lot.
everything.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, and look, we're a little bit past our first reset. I do want to do something though before we go on. Real quick, change subject. One of the things I always ask my guests is to recommend a book, and then I'll give another recommendation. Mine actually, as I'm kind of looking at it, I go, oh, it was the next one in line. This fits perfect. What about a book? Give me a book. You got a book?
Yes. So I've been listening to Moral AI and How We Get There.
Okay.
Because there's so many books out there that are instructional about AI. And I've actually, when I started to really lean into it, I just started to listen to different podcasts, whether it was from a systems integrator, or, like a Deloitte or a McKinsey, or just a top expert. I see a lot of people moving their content from LinkedIn over to some different platforms like Substack. So I subscribed and listened to those, and they're quick and easy. If you read a book, sometimes it's just too heavy too early. But I really like this because I think what's the big question is, how do we use AI responsibly? So I want to lean into that. In my STEM advocacy, I'm a big advocate for tech for good.
Yes.
So I want to be able to tell that story. Otherwise, we got some huge, apocalypse coming with tech at the center. And I want to be able to think about that. You mentioned something earlier. There's a big human element. So how do you do that? And it comes down to thinking about AI responsibly, and then thinking about learning, because AI is not necessarily going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI may take your job. So
hold on to that thought. Because I want, like, after the break, that's actually my topic, is I want to dig a little bit into that. So you're like bleeding. I'm like, that's awesome. Because I want to dig in a little bit to more of the clarity and the trust factor of the AI, and how we'll talk about that in a minute. I'll give you my book real quick. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways by Susan Jeffers. And it was a book that I read. So I started reading books. Actually, I read books, but then I started listening to books. So when I would run, I was listening to music, and about 3 years ago, I started listening to books as I ran, and it was really like peaceful. Like it drove me to run. So I started keeping track. This is I think the 15th that I actually would talk into and keep notes on. And it was, looking back at it, I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy, because it teaches you that fear is something that we can eliminate. Now, it's something that is there to re-educate within ourselves and to relearn the thoughts. And it's basically the thoughts that trap us, our own thoughts. And if we remember back in the day, it was a survival instinct of our ancestors. And it was something that was really good. Now it's something that paralyzes people because they don't know how to use it. She talked about all fear is ultimately comes down to belief of, I can't handle this, or it's something that I can't handle. So you get that thought in your head. And the basic cure that she said was, and it goes back to my show, trust in your ability to handle anything that comes your way. Recognize that fear is just a natural response of unfamiliarity. It's about taking action anyway, being able to grow in your confidence and expand your comfort zone. When we get out of our comfort zone is when many people get fearful. But at the same time, that's where we develop our personal power, and that's our growth process. So it's extremely important. Just a couple of real takeaways that I loved was its responsibility, the positive thinking, and choosing empowering perspectives to move from pain to power was something that she put. And then saying yes to life was huge. That instead of worrying about what's going on, say yes to life, trusting yourself, and then taking action to wherever it shows. Look, today, as I said earlier, is my 25th podcast. What Makes You Tick is an authentic, relaxful, purposeful conversation on trust, clarity, and traction. Why? It's there to incorporate your purpose into what you do and to impact your life and others. How are we going to do that? We do that through sharing business and personal stories to build a culture of trust, creating clear, impactful clarity within your life as a leader, and then with insights on how we build traction to gain within our lives. My guest today is Jill Sweeney, and we're talking a lot of tech stuff. And I want to reset. I want to go back because the next thing I had on my list that I kind of wanted to talk about was expanding on AI, but I really want to focus on one, trust, and two, how do we use this for our young group or anybody that's coming out? Because let's tie it to purpose. For me, I think we need to do a better job of teaching our kids purpose with the family unit that's kind of dissolving away, unfortunately, and it's not as cohesive as it used to be. Schools, let me rephrase that. Schools don't do a good job of teaching kids at a young age what purpose and building on it. So going back is, I guess the thing I'd love to hear your advice on is, one, how do we trust AI? And two, what's something that can help with clarity and passion within our youngsters to develop the AI?
Great question. So I think that the trust is really important. I think you have to model the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned this sense of purpose. This is really important. And when my girls were growing up, we had the opportunity to be part of a formalized volunteering organization. It's mother-daughter. And one of the challenges is, I'm so proud of my girls, and I'm proud of creating young women and being a model for other young women to know their purpose and know their voice and be a leader. But I've decided that during the period of age 14 to 17, maybe not when they're living under your house, because basically you've just created this little mini me that can argue back with you. So what we found was really great, and this is one of the reasons that the organization was created, was to strengthen that bond between mother-daughter. Now, Bryan, you're out earning the money, coming home and being the hero. You see the nice, clean version of the kids. A lot of times, just due to hormones and the development cycle, young girls clash with their mothers. And
Mm-hmm.
this was a great way. But so becoming closer was wonderful. The better piece was having a bigger sense of self. There is a world out there that does not have the same opportunities. As much as we think that we don't have a great life, there's someone out there that has a worse one.
Correct.
And you have an opportunity to give back and unite through that. So that sense of purpose is very important. And what I'm seeing, though, I do think we have more compassionate young people than we've had. I don't remember in college having, I may have been asked to do some volunteer opportunities, but if I had an opportunity to go to a fraternity event, I probably chose that over going to the food bank. Mm-hmm. So I do know that many service organizations now, and even my sorority did have a very strong service mentality, but not everybody gets that. But I do see that more and more through the universities and the schools. And I think that and strengthening that is really helpful. So you learn something, you give back. You learn something, mm-hmm. you give back, whether it's right. going and read to another class. I used to love the Bluebonnet program in elementary school, yet I couldn't speak enough Spanish to be able to answer questions and speak. I saw that there was groups of kids that weren't coming to hear me read. I wanted to go to some of the underserved schools and we'd love to have you, but it's not really going to work out. It's going to be frustrating. So mm-hmm. using AI for those types of opportunities could be great. And just figuring out how could we, put main concepts up on a wall while you're reading it. They're learning the English, but they're also getting to see the images from the book. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunities around that for kind of assistive and adaptive learning. Mm-hmm. But this sense of purpose is really important. But I also think we've got to marry it with something I think is missing. And in a recent Klein ISD CTE council, we came up with, what are the skills we should be teaching? And that was critical thinking. Mm-hmm. So we marry that. And anything from, you send your kid off to college and you haven't told them, somebody wants a check, but they don't have a check. They just have a debit card. How do you manage through that? What are the base skills you have to learn? And, I'm not one of those moms, but many moms and dads, do a lot for their kids. I want them to stand on their own 2 feet. And part Absolutely. Of that is, we were both working. So that was hard to do that. So I wasn't always there, to order something or make a doctor's appointment for them. They had to do that themselves. And I think that's a really important thing to be able to figure that out, or not get a ride home from school and figure out how you're going to do that. So this critical
Yes.
thinking is
Yeah.
important, but we do too much sometimes.
Uh-huh.
And as I go through college and study abroad, I've joined some of those Facebook groups to learn, best practices and what size of luggage do you need when you're going to Denmark or you're going to Prague. But there's some parents in there that want to do everything. The kid has
Correct.
an issue and they're wanting to like fly over there or ship something, which costs just a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And then I'm seeing crop up a new business model of moms in the area that will go intercede and help the child get a new pair of eyeglasses or retainers, but maybe more prep on the front end of here's things you must, do look in your son's suitcase. Okay.
Yes.
You should make sure he has more than one pair of underwear. And that's a real live example from one of the Facebook groups.
I don't know. I'm with you. You see, I raised my kids. I've got 3 kids too. 2 boys, 1 girl. The girl, of course, as you were talking about, the girl's a daddy's girl. And I'm with you. Like, you have to be able to give them, you can't do everything for them. You have to go, okay, here's what we need to do. You pack for them when they're younger. You show them how to pack, and then you let them pack. And if you don't, then you're packing from them and they go out there and go, what do I do? Because one day you want them on their own and you want them to have a life that they can live. So I'm with you. You have to let them. But here's the other thing. And here's a teacher, business, all of that. This is what parents are too afraid of letting their kids fail. And some of the best teaching is for those kids. My kids right now, I've got one that's starting a business. I've got one that's up that she went to school. She stopped because she doesn't know what she wants to do. And then my other son has moved back this way to kind of straighten out his life and do some different things. The funny thing is, with all 3 of them, over the past 3-4 years, I've had to go through, actually longer than that, maybe the last 5 years, I've had to go back through certain things in my life, experiences that were just off the wall and unexpected. And I'll be darned if because of that, I didn't have the opportunity to teach them because they had to go through it. And it's one of those things where I'm not going to do this for you, but I have to go through it myself so that I can teach you and give you advice, but you're going to make your own decisions. Those things. And look, what about, like, let's use the AI. How about the communication with AI and any of the tech as a parent, as an adult? How can we utilize that even in business? How can you communicate into it and become an expert in it?
Great question. So good old fashioned doing, test it out, play it out. The podcasts are amazing source just to learn new activities.
What's the podcast again?
There's a bunch of podcasts. So there are a number of channels on LinkedIn groups that you can join. And I regularly attend the section podcasts, and I only do the free versions, and I've gotten plenty for free. There's a lot of advisors out there offering introductions. So I go to those. I read a lot of books. But I find them not as hands-on as being able to show it. You're reading it on a page. It doesn't come as life to me as much as being shown how to utilize something. But the trying and talking to people. So going to the different meetups. So the other one is also called Houston AI, but it's founded by some executives in the city, and it represents the top industries, AI in medicine, space, energy, and manufacturing and tech. So that is a great one. And I'll be happy to put a list together and share it with you. You can share it out with the listeners.
Yes,
so we can
I would love that.
Okay.
Love that.
But those are great because I knew what I saw, but what I was seeing working at a big tech company was from a big tech point organizations, as well as seeing Houston as home to some great AI startups. And it's really awesome to be able to see that. And, there's entrepreneurial growth in Houston, and there's entrepreneurial growth across the state. But it's just good to go and hear someone's pitch and understand how it works. It makes it real for you. But that's how I learn. I want to be immersed in it. I'm not so much a learning reader. I love to read, But in
Right.
technical things, I just want to dig in. So I'll either go to a lab, I may not know anything, but I can ask someone, hey, tell me why you did this, just so I
Yeah.
can understand the why. And I think asking the why is what's important. And that's what our young people need to do. They need to know the why. They need to know how it's going to, what they're doing is going to be measured. What does success look like?
Uh-huh.
That will
Uh-huh.
engender the trust with the people they need to be working out while they're figuring out the stakeholders and the politics and all those other things. But you ask the why, then you get down to the simplicity, because tech can become very, very complex. And you want to go down to its simplest level to be able to explain it and understand it. Then you can build on the complexity, because you don't know what audience you're going to be talking to, what their interest and expertise is in AI. So that's my suggestion, is to dig in to the level that you can.
No, I love that. No, and one of the things that I know there's look, I want to apologize again. There's a little bit of a glitching here, here and there. I most of everything you came through. There were a couple of glitches. It was delayed, but fine. You're doing great. I don't know what the tech issue is, but it's funny. We're having a tech conversation and there's a tech issue. But as far as mindset, how do you for me, I want to learn. I was a tech guy. I remember you talking about dating yourself. I remember being in high school, learning how to write BASIC. And that was like a new class back then. And, I was an athletic guy. I loved but there was a side of me that really liked the technology that was behind it, even though it was very simple back then. And I remember making a game or designing a game that was a hangman game. And it was fun. But how do you, now it's such a big piece. One of the big things that we have, and we've only got a couple minutes to discuss before we get to our next piece, but what about mindset? How do you create a positive mindset around all this technology growth?
That's a great question. So I have had the benefit of being very persistent. So with the immigrant mindset, that's really important. You've got to go in with the I can, and persistence and grit and not giving up is really important. I've had a few times in my life where I've had to be very persistent. You must keep trying. So not too long ago, I had a mobility issue, and I may have had it when I first met you, but I found that I needed surgery, and I had the opportunity to go to Alaska, but the timing was terrible. No one could go in my family. I couldn't get around. I was using a wheelchair, a walker, or a scooter, but I went anyway. And I could have stayed home. I probably would have just laid in the bed, because too many exercising things just was hurt. It was a trouble to put the scooter in my car by myself. I couldn't. The wheelchair weighed like 500 pounds, so I had to leave it at the office, and took so much power. So there was all these obstacles, and it'd been easy to say, I'm not going to do it, but I did it. And I went and I found that there's all kinds of ways to overcome issues. First, you can actually ask for help. People are willing. You go, you're out on a tour, and you get to the edge of the curb, and people are rushing by you. You can't just wait to be noticed and hope that someone will, help you off the curb. Instead, you have to say, excuse me, can you help bump me off the curb? And they're like, oh, there's a curb cut down the way. I'll take you down there. Okay, great. But you have to ask for the help. And I found that the power is within you. So you have to think, I can do this. And I actually found there's an Alaskan Tlingit Indian saying, it is, I wrote this down, I too ye yati, it is within you. And that is something that I've kept. I have it on my screenshot, along with a glacier I got to see, just to remind you. I mean, the worst time to go on a great adventure, but you have to adapt.
Correct.
So I can do it, and I'll adapt to what I find, and I will be successful. And if you don't have that mindset, you're not going to be successful. And I think it's a challenge for women and anyone who's trying something new that might have the imposter syndrome.
Yes.
You just have to beat that beast down, because it rises up, to fill up, all of your thoughts, and you have to think the other direction. So you can do it.
No, and I just had a conversation with a business owner. He'll remain nameless, but he was a new business owner, and he was talking about perfect. and how he keeps waiting and thinking perfect. You can't. You just keep going, and you have to understand that you're going to have positives and you're going to have negatives. You're going to have success and you're going to have failure. Failure teaches you what you need to learn, and success teaches you what you're doing right, and you just keep trying. But even success sometimes can be a mask for what really is going on. The book I'm listening to today was talking about how in sales you kind of have this facade of, you go out and you create something and you're getting all this business and you're meeting the marks and everything, but is somebody the people that you're selling to, are they referring business to you? If they're not, it's an ended model. In other words, you might be successful for a year or two and then there's nobody there. So it's crap. And it was great. Look, we've got one more section. Thank you for being a listener of my podcast, What Makes You Tick. Jill and I are having an authentic, purposeful conversation on trust, clarity, and traction. AI, technology, all that stuff is incorporated in here. If you have any questions, we'd love to see. We got about 10 minutes left. We'd love to hear any questions, anything you'd like to ask Jill. I'll go off script. I have no problem. Or anything you'd like to add. Jill, from our discussion so far, just very short, 1 minute, what is a great takeaway that the audience should know from our discussion so far? One thing.
So the audience, one thing is lean into AI. Whatever hesitation you have, lean into it. Start with personal, move to business, and be part of this wave, because it's not going away. And think of the past. Did you really want to give up fax machines? You want to have the phone book, the phone booths on the side? It is changing, and you have to evolve into that. Otherwise, you're going to find it a barrier.
Yeah. And one of the things that I found with AI is that it reduces the amount of time that's needed in the things that we do. You can reduce your time and be more productive in some of the things, business wise, personal wise, that you like, without having to spend a great amount of time doing it. And, guiding someone, I'm a teacher, you're with Klein ISD. So we both have that understanding of what education. Were you ever in education outside of Klein ISD on the board or advising?
Yes, I'm on the advisory board, and It's a great group of different business people to come in and provide a jobs pipeline, something really important, those real life experiences, so kids can figure out what do they want to be.
So how would you guide somebody? You're going to give somebody advice. This is the way I like to end mine is we'll talk a little bit about advice, but the first thing is you've got a pressure situation and you need help. How can AI or any technology be the best use case within that time?
Yeah, it's a great use case. You can go in and write some parameters of what your experience. So what's really important, everyone's heard of garbage in, garbage out. You have to write a good prompt, which is basically the question you have for AI. So write a prompt, give it some context. So whether you're Bryan writing a LinkedIn post, how do I write a wonderful hook to my podcast to get people to come, or even who should I invite next in my podcast? So you can give it framework, and then you can go in and feed some information. Maybe you already have a voice. Maybe you've already written something. You could put that in as a guide. One of my favorite things to do is for a new graduate is, okay, let's take that job description of that internship you're going to apply to, and let's figure out how to quickly tailor it. And what are the gaps? So you give them the resume, blinded, of course. You don't want to give all your personal data.
Right.
And then write it, paste in the intro in this interview. And what are the key questions I should ask? So it just is going to help you. If you have some gaps, it's going to highlight them. And then you can go back and be able to explain what it is that you need to be doing. So using it, feeding it information, tailoring it, making it yours, not the old kind of cut and paste that's going to be very generic.
Right. And one of the things that, look, with the older generation and a lot of other people that are new to AI, There's so many things that it can do. Think of it, treat it like a person, have a conversation with it, and you'll get more out of it. A lot of people are still using it like Google, and you just put information in and Google, see what it comes up, or to rewrite an email or to rewrite a post. There's so many more things that it can do, including pictures. And I mean, you name it. We could go for another hour just talking about the things that it can do.
It's a personal advisor. It can be your personal assistant, whether it's to research something, prep you for an event, go through your emails and triage and tell you what's most important, what deadlines are coming up. There's so many tools that you can use. In an academic setting, you can use it to feed in your syllabuses and your rubrics and get you organized. And you can create a study plan.
You can even create a lesson plan if you wanted to for a whole unit. Trust me. Like, okay, so as far as somebody chasing their dreams, anybody, if they're looking to trace, what would be one piece of advice you'd give them as far as chasing their dreams?
Well, that's great, because I do think dreams should be chased, and you have to have an opportunity, whether it's going to be your career or a passion that's extra. One of the things that I think is very important is having a personal board of advisors, people who know you, people who care for you, and people who have your dream that you would like to achieve. So be able to go and talk about someone who's starting a new venture or who has started a new venture similar or adjacent to yours. Talk to somebody who has a job in your field that you might be interested in. Talk to alumni at your school. Talk to a successful business person. So when I go to an event, I usually have 2 or 3 questions. I'm either pitching softly to find out what challenges people have and talking about how I can align with those challenges, or it's promoting Supergirl Shine Foundation to talk about advancing the STEM workforce, or getting more volunteers to come help with the CTE projects and the workforce pipeline. So there's many different ways to do that. And I'd like to connect people back, but I think that you have to have more than your circle to help you move forward. And the new generation that's coming out of college has a great, strong group. They need to think to their alumni. They actually have to go to the career center and take advantage of a number of free resources to help put them on the path. But don't give up that passion, but you have to share with your passion so you are made accountable. And I think that's important, because a passion and a dream kept inside is only going to grow in your heart. It's not going to grow in reality.
Yeah. Don't regret. I mean, the biggest regret are the ones that you don't take. So go ahead and give it a take. And you're talking about the young people. The one thing that I see, and usually I finish the show with this piece, but the one thing that bothers me with our young people is how connected they are, but it's like there's an isolation between that human factor and the connection, constantly walking around with their earbuds in. And it's like, I went to yesterday, I went and watched football with a couple of guys and had a bite to eat. We're sitting there. Why? And I'm looking around, and there was 3 different families at 3 different times. And you got these young kids who are sitting there. One of them is in a high chair with audio. Like, what are we? I get the fact, but when are we going to remove that so our kids can connect? My advice to a family would be, let's do that. Move the tech, get to know your kids, because you have the biggest influence based on being there. But for you, what advice to our youngsters, our youth, what advice would you give them moving forward? It doesn't matter, whatever you want to give them.
Master the kind of the emotional intelligence skills by talking to other people, and make sure you're talking to your peers, your boss and their peers. And I think grandparents and the older generation is great for doing this too, but stay connected, volunteer and help. And I think that, pairing up different mentorship models where you're teaching someone a skill, then you'll find someone in the workplace that will want to learn your tech skills, but you'll want to know how to go into a meeting and greet people. You can't go into the meeting and just look at your laptop, because you won't be contributing and you won't have learned that. But, be able to participate. And I think there's one word, it's be in the moment and be in kind of the transaction to be able to show your worth, but also engage and learn.
Love that. No, awesome. Great advice. Be you. Look, please, everybody out there, let's connect. Follow the show live. It's on LinkedIn. You can find me on YouTube, and now we're on Spotify, which I'll post right after this. I'll get the link, and depending on if my technology stays up with the storm coming in. Jill, what's the best way for our audience to get in touch with you?
You can ping me on LinkedIn. It's Jill Sweeney, and picture the little more polished than today. Just connect with me. I'm happy to chat and share what I've learned, and would love to continue the conversation. Thank you, Bryan.
Yeah, no, it's been awesome. Look, Jill, thank you for being my guest on What Makes You Tick.
Okay.
Let's go out, make an impact in our communities and our lives. Let's do it through trust, clarity, and traction. Let's be transitional over transactional. You can find me on LinkedIn to stay connected to future episodes, a deeper conversation, or anything you want to follow up with. Jill, of course, has been amazing. Find my friend, connect with her on LinkedIn. Join me next week when I have a conversation with Jeff Price, another guy that's in tech, business, AI, and a podcaster. I was on his podcast, and it was phenomenal. So he'll be my guest. Look, thank everybody for being here. Go out and have a fantastic week and enjoy your Thanksgiving. Do something like me and go cook and watch football. See ya.
Okay, bye.